Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of the Metsmania podcast. I am Clayton Caldwell, talking about the New York Mets. Well, the Mets came into St. Louis, a team that is rebuilding, a team that doesn't have a lot of talent on it right now, a bunch of young players, and they lost 2 out of 3 with very, very little offense support. They got 5 runs in 3 games in St. Louis, 4 of them in game one, 0 in game two, and 1, a solo home run by Juan Soto in game 3. And so a very disappointing series in St. Louis. It's still early. They're 3-3. It's not the end of the world, but there are some glaring signs and some things that we need to talk about here as Met fans on the Mets Mania podcast. We're going to break down this entire series in St. Louis. We're going to preview the San Francisco series. I'm going to also do something fun where I'm going to do a status of Carlos Mendoza, hot seat status. Now, Carlos Mendoza, to me, started this year on the hot seat. I don't think there's any question about that. I'm going to tell you where I think he is right now, and I got tiers. I got about 6 tiers of the hot seat that we will have, and I'll tell you where I think he is and break down all the seats. So that'll be a lot of fun, too. I'll give you some positives because there are some positives that are going on with this team. And then, of course, we'll talk about a lot of the negative, which there's a lot to be negative about. So we'll talk about all that. But right now we're 3-3. We go to San Francisco. They got 4 games out west in Oracle Park in San Francisco, what used to be Pac Bell Park. And San Francisco's had a rough start to the season. They got a lot of drama over there. Their pitching's not very good, but their offense is pretty good. So we'll see what the Mets can do, but yeah, we will certainly see. But let me start with this. It was this team, and again, I'll break down the games in a second, but I think this team, my biggest concern is there seems to be a malaise over this team. And we had a lot of issues today. I'm going to break down some of the mistakes this team made during this 3-game series. Mental, silly, inexcusable mistakes. And today we saw a couple with Francisco Lindor, a couple with Francisco Alvarez. We even saw some with Luis Robert Jr. So we saw some mental mistakes here with this team. And that's the biggest concern. It's almost like we're still in spring training. And I'll explain that in a little bit with what I'm about to say. So I'm going to start with Monday's game, which was on March 30th. The Mets won 4-2. It was Clay Holmes versus Kyle Leahy. The lineup. Let me talk about the lineup on Monday and what I thought about it. So the lineup on Monday was pretty similar to what we've seen, other than you had Beatty in right field and Jared Young playing first base. So no Luis Robert Jr., who they kind of hinted on Sunday that Luis Robert Jr. was going to get a rest. He played 2 games in a row against Pittsburgh. One of them was extra innings. So they kind of hinted, oh, yeah, he's going to get a rest here. And so Jared Young got to start at first base, which was kind of surprising. I thought it should have been Mark Vientos there. Vientos does see some time here. He did have a couple of, I think he had 1 hit in this series, but he did play. He played a little bit on, I think he started on Tuesday and started on Wednesday, which we'll get to, and most likely we'll start on Thursday against the lefty Robbie Ray. But that was my first thing that stood out to me was, wow, Jared Young's in there instead of Mark Vientos at first base. And, I think maybe part of that might have been they're not really in love with Vientos' defense, but Polanco had 2 hits, but he's got an Achilles injury, it looks like. So he's been nursing that. But really on Monday, the Mets were able to take advantage of Kyle Leahy not really being that good of a pitcher. And he was a former reliever who is trying to become a starter. He pitched 5 innings, gave up 8 hits, 4 earned runs. And the Mets, again, scored. It's hard to even fathom that they scored only 5 runs in this series. It's hard to even fathom that. And on Monday, those runs were a Bo Bichette ground out in the first inning. Lindor led Monday's game off with a triple, if you remember. And then Bo Bichette got up there, hit a ground ball to J.J. Weatherholt. I think I'm saying that name right. Yeah, J.J. Weatherholt. And if you remember, Weatherholt couldn't get the ball out of his glove. Lindor broke on contact and went home. And if Weatherholt can get the ball out of his glove, that's most likely an out. Lindor's going to be out at home. He's got a good arm, and he was dead to rights. But he couldn't get it out. Mets caught a break. They flipped it to first and got Bichette, and the Mets took the 1-0 lead. So that was a break that the Mets took. The Cardinals bounced back. They scored one right there in the bottom of the first inning. And then in the top of the fifth, the Mets had an opportunity, and Bo Bichette singled. But they had the bases loaded in that situation, right? Like, when you go back to the fifth inning of that game, they had Benj led that inning off with a single. Francisco Lindor walked. So, I'm sorry, there was 2 on and 2 out. It was first and third. Benj was on third. Soto was on first. And then Bichette hit that single to score Benj, where he fell down, pretty much. Got it over Weatherholt's glove to right center, and it was 2-1 Mets. And so that was a clean single and a clean hit. So, but the Mets, again, that was an opportunity where you had the top of the order come up, and they only pushed together one run off of Leahy. And then you had the top of the sixth, which was a great inning. Brett Baty led off with a single. Jared Young probably had the hardest hit ball of the weekend, a line drive, hard hit double in the gap that Brett Baty scored on. Young standing on second base and proved me wrong. Again, I thought Mark Vientos should have played. But Young in there knocks Kyle Lee out of the game and did a great job with that RBI double. It was 3-1 Mets. So Marcus Semien, of course, struck out. What else is new? We'll get to him in a little bit. And then Carson Benj grounded out with 2 outs. Lindor got hit by a pitch. It was first and second. And Lindor got hit by a pitch, and Alvarez went to second. So at that point, with 2 outs, the Mets had Young on third, Alvarez on second, and Lindor at first, with Juan Soto and Bo Bichette coming up. Soto walked. He was walked by Matt Swanson, but he walked him. And Swanson is not a very good pitcher. They talk about how his ERA was through the roof. He was not very good. Now, that run was charged to Leahy because it was Young that ultimately scored, but he walked Juan Soto. So it wasn't like the Mets had a big hit there, right? He walked him 4-1 Mets, and the Mets wouldn't score. That was the top of the sixth. They wouldn't score again until Juan Soto's home run on Wednesday. This is the 6th inning on Monday. And Juan Soto's home run on Wednesday afternoon was in the 6th inning. So that just shows you. They went an entire game, almost 2 games, if you do it by innings, right? Because you had 5 innings on Wednesday, 9 innings on Tuesday, and then 3 innings on Monday that they went without scoring. So that's 20, what's that? 17 innings without scoring a run. They went before Soto's solo home run. That just got out, by the way. It was just fair. It was crushed, but it was just fair, and it just got out. So the Mets were able to hold on. Holmes pitched 5 2/3 innings on Monday, 2 earned runs, 3 walks, 5 Ks. I thought he was good. Wasn't great. Tobias Myers was excellent on Monday, pitched an inning and a third, struck out 3. My first bone to pick with Mendy this series was, why was he not pitching more innings? And you're going to sit there and say, well, then you could use him on Wednesday. I understand that, but this guy was a starter last year. He is here to pitch multiple innings. He should have given a ball to Devin Williams. He should have. There was no need to work Brooks Raley, and I love Brooks Raley. I've made that clear. Why not leave Myers in the game? Why are you dying to go with another reliever? Raley's a guy who you have to use him in certain spots. And to me, I know it's a 2-run game in the 8th, but Myers was mowing them down. Just let Myers continue and get the ball to Williams. We call it a day. Devin Williams was great, by the way. His airbender looked great, and he struck out Nathan Church to end that game. And that's one. They were at that point 3-1. It wasn't the sexiest win. We all kind of sat there and said, okay, wasn't the sexiest win of all time. But the Mets get the W against a bad St. Louis Cardinal team. That's kind of where we were on Monday. I think we were feeling pretty good on Monday. I had no problem with it. Bichette was 1 for 5, but he had 2 RBIs. Polanco's 2 for 5. I mentioned Young. He had the big hit to me was a double, the RBI double, and a run scored. So that was Monday's game. And Mets are 3-1. We go into Tuesday, and I'll tell you, I'm excited because Kodai Senga's pitching. And Kodai Senga is such a polarizing figure, especially for me. I think he's very overrated at times. I'll be honest with you. I think he's a very good pitcher, but the way people talk about him, you think he's Kurt Schilling in his prime. He's done a nice job. He's had one good year. I even think last year, a lot of his early success last year, he wasn't going deep into games, and he had a lot of base runners on. So I'm not, wrapped up in Kodai Senga, but I thought he pitched well on Tuesday. So I was really looking forward to his start because I'm like, hey, I want to see if this guy is going to be the guy we saw from 2023, where he was great, or is he going to be the guy we kind of saw at the end of 2024 in a postseason, which was a disaster, and at the end of 2025, where he had to go to minor leagues, it was a disaster. What Kodai Senga are we going to see? And the first interesting thing I noticed was the lineup. So the lineup is out, and there's some changes. One is there's no Jorge Polanco, who's been nursing I think it's an Achilles injury. Been nursing that, so he's not in the lineup. They had Vientos in at DH. Jared Young got another start at first base, I guess, which was fine by me because he played a hot hand. And he had that big hit on Monday. Luis Robert was back in the lineup in center field, batting cleanup after a day off on Monday. Pretty much a day off. He came in late in the game for defensive replacement. And then Luis Torrens was catching, which I found interesting because the Mets were going to have to use Torrens one of these 2 games, either Tuesday or Wednesday, because it's day game after night game. They're not going to catch Alvarez a day game after a night game. So I sat there and said, okay, Torrens is batting 9th and catching. That to me meant Kodai Senga. The reason why he's catching there is for Kodai Senga. And Gary Cohen said on the broadcast, it's because they're facing a lefty tomorrow. Alvarez is going to face a lefty, which doesn't make a lot of sense because Torrens does fine against lefties too. Whatever. And then he came out with the comment later, or the stat later, that said, Kodai Senga's ERA with Luis Torrens behind the plate is 1 run lower than with anybody else behind the plate. That was the key. And it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it didn't matter. But the one thing I want to say about that is keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on Luis Torrens catching Kodai Senga as much as possible. And if it turns out that Senga has a lot of success with Torrens, and because you're not going to be able to, I don't think you're going to be able to do that every single time. Alvarez's bat is too good, although he struggled in this series as well. But his bat is too good for Senga to have a personal catcher in Torrens. But Torrens is a better defensive catcher. He's a better receiver. So that made sense. Senga, who has that ghost fork that splits into the ground, that made sense to go Torrens there. But keep an eye on that. And I'm not a fan of personal catchers, so you might hear me gripe about that later on in the year. But Torrens was the catcher. That was really the things that stood out to me was Vientos got a start, and Jared Young, and of course Torrens, which I spent some time on. So that was really the lineup that made me go, okay, that was interesting. And what I noticed the most was no Brett Beatty in this lineup. Beatty, who is, in my opinion, one of the most important bats we have. He could have been playing first base with uh, instead of Jared Young. He could have been playing right field instead of Carson Bench. Now, I know Bench is a better right fielder, but he hasn't smoked the ball much. And we'll get to him in a little bit as well. But to me, you have to have Beatty's bat in the lineup. And what bothers me, I can live with a rest day occasionally for Jorge Polanco because he's an older player with an injury history. I can live with Luis Robert Jr., although I think it hurt him this time because he was crushing the ball against Pittsburgh, got a day off, came back and went 1 for 10 or whatever, 1 for something in this series. So you have to wonder if the day off kind of hurt him offensively. I can live with him getting a day off, though, because, he's got injury history and he's kind of an older player. Brett Beatty's 26 years old. We need offense. I didn't understand why he got sat. And he came into the game. Vientos only got 2 at-bats against Pallant, and then Beatty came in and got 2 at-bats and went 0 for 2. But I was kind of surprised to see Beatty not in the lineup. To me, you have to run him out there every day or close to it. And we just got a day off on Friday. We're talking about Tuesday. Like, this kid's 26 years old. Get him in the lineup. So, I had a big problem with Beatty not being in the lineup. That was my big problem on Tuesday. So, you go to the game, right? And to me, the way Senga pitched was fine. He pitched 6 innings, gave 4 hits, 2 earned, 3 walks, and 9 strikeouts. The 9 strikeouts were impressive. He did labor some, but I thought he pitched fine. I don't think he was outstanding. I didn't go, wow, with this guy, like everybody kind of makes him out to be. And he had a bad 3rd inning, although his defense did let him down. Luis Robert misplayed a ball in center field that cost the Mets, I think, a couple of runs. They didn't rule it an error, but he took a step forward instead of back. It got behind him. He almost caught it, but it was a bad play by Luis Robert Jr. There's no question about that. That was a bad job, and that was the 3rd inning that happened. On the Victor Scott, the second, ripped a double to center field, and he just misplayed it. But that ball was crushed. Like, I know Robert should have done a better job there, especially with how how everybody talks about him in center field. That ball was hit 103 miles an hour off the bat. That ball was crushed. That's something you got like Senga got. Oh, poor Kodai Senga. Like, he got hard contact there. And then J.J. Wellerholt, same thing. Finished the 3rd inning there. And his at bat, a fastball, 97 miles an hour. Literally, if you see a picture of it, it is right down the middle. Wellerholt hits it to center field. And that ball as well was misplayed by Luis Robert Jr. He made a bad throw. Scott was going to try and score. He stopped at 3rd, and Luis Robert Jr. overthrew the cutoff man. Wellerholt, playing smartly, saw that he overthrew the cutoff man and went to 2nd. So now, instead of 1st and 3rd, it's 2nd and 3rd because your center fielder messed up. Luis Robert Jr. had a play where he probably could have caught that ball in dead center, so Scott's not even on 2nd. And then on a single, cost him a base. So he cost him like 4 bases in those 2 at-bats. There's no question about that. But they were hard-hit balls. And then Ivan Herrera, 107-mile-an-hour exit velocity off the bat, a 2-run double, 2-0 Cardinals. So that 3rd inning was interesting because you could say, well, Luis Robert Jr. didn't do a whole lot to help Kodai Senga, and he didn't. But those balls were crushed. And to Senga's credit, he bounced back. 1-2-3 inning in the 4th. Had a couple of walks in the 5th, but got out of that inning unscathed. And he pitched to the 6th inning, which for him is very, very good. 1-2-3 in the 6th, strikeout, and strikeout. So he struck out the side to end the 6th inning. So he pitched well. But the Mets offense was terrible. I don't know how else to explain it other than that. They weren't able to push a run across. A lot of disappointing at-bats. The Mets had 3 hits. 3 hits on Wednesday. Soto had 2 of them. And the only other hit was Jared Young, who had a good series. One of the few guys to have a good series, and Soto and Polanco. But Polanco wasn't in the game here. Those are 3 guys that I think hit this series. Literally everybody else was terrible offensively. So the Mets offense doesn't do anything. They don't even really have a whole lot of opportunities to do anything. I guess in the top of the 6th, you had Palant. They knocked him out of the game. Soto ripped a double to right field. Bo Bichette walked. First and second, nobody out. Luis Robert Jr. hits a fly ball to center field. And then a double play by Jared Young ended the threat. And the Mets offense, again, wasn't able to put up a run. Now, the problem I have with Mendy in this situation is he went to Richard Lovelady after Kodai Senga. Senga goes 6 innings. And then in the 7th, it's a 2-0 game. 2-0. And he brings in a reliever who not only has been overworked, he pitched 25 plus pitches on, I guess that was Sunday. And then on Friday also pitched 20, or Saturday pitched over 20 pitches. So he was overworked. And then he says, I'm going to go Richard Lovelady here. And Richard Lovelady is, let's be honest, the worst reliever in the bullpen. And I get that he doesn't want to use his A guys in down 2-0. But to me, 2-0 is a bloop and a blast and you're tied. 3-0 is a lot different than 2-0. 3-0 is, especially with the offense struggling, is not that. And we're still early in the year. I get it. He wants to protect arms. But can we go with somebody better than Richard Lovelady, please? And again, you had to use Brooks Raley Monday. You had to. For whatever reason, you couldn't let Tobias Myers pitch the 8th inning. So he's unavailable on Tuesday. Unavailable. He could have been in this game and at least threw you an inning. Instead, he goes with Lovelady for 2. Lovelady gives up a run, a walk, 2 strikeouts, some hard contact. Gave him a home run to Ramon Arias, who crushed the ball, and then a single to Victor Scott. Somehow got Weatherholt to strike out. And then a great play by Jared Young on Alec Burleson to save a run. And then Mason Wynn, who only had 1 hit, of course, the game winner on Wednesday in the entire series, got him to fly out to right field in Carson Bench. In the 8th inning, the Mets do nothing against old friend Ryan Stanek, who, why not bring him back if we're throwing out guys like Richard Lovelady? But Stanek gets Lindor to ground out, strikes out Soto, gets Bo Bichette to ground out. I'm sorry, that was the top of the 8th. Stanek pitched the 7th. The 8th was Jojo Romero. And then it was Riley O'Brien who shut the Mets down 1-2-3 in the 9th. And the Mets went down meekly. There's really not much else you can say. But my biggest problem with the Richard Lovelady thing is it feels almost like the Mets, and this is the overarching problem right now I have with this team. It feels like right now, this manager, some of the front office, are saying, these games don't really matter that much. Like, it's early in the year, we got a long season, and, they don't really matter that much. We want to be ready and protect these guys for August and September. And it almost feels like we are in spring training still. And if you're managing that way, if you're, how you manage and the mood in that room is, we're going to be fine, let's worry about September, October when we get there. that's going to portray down to your team. Like the team's going to take on that personality. I always say the team takes on a personality manager. And when you kind of, what I hate using this word, but it felt like punt that game when you brought in Lovelady in the 7th and 8th inning because you don't want to use your A relievers in a 2-0 game, that's going to translate down to your team. And I think that's my biggest problem. And when we talk about the mistakes that are made on Wednesday, you have to wonder if some of these guys are sitting there going, well, it's early. We're not really that focused, but we'll be focused. It's kind of alarming if that's the message your manager wants to portray. And that's what it feels like to me when you do that with Richard Lovelady. Like, it feels like you're punting that game saying, you know what? We're down 2-0 in the 7th inning. I don't believe in my offense. I don't want to use my A relievers. You know what? We'll save them for more important times. And he gives up a run, makes it 3-0, and I just feel like that wasn't a good message to send to your team. Not only one inning, which he got out of barely, but a second inning too, where you're like, what is going on? Why is Luis Garcia here if he's not pitching these games? Like, it just, to me, sends a bad message. And I have to wonder if it affected this team on Wednesday. So let's go to today's game, Wednesday's game. 2-1, 11 innings. Mets have played, 3 extra inning games already in 6 games? That's crazy. But game started, of course, Freddie Peralta for the Mets was on a mound. Matt Liberatore on a mound for St. Louis. Game of aces. It was an hour delay because of rain. And Peralta pitched, I thought, pretty well. Now, some of the things we have to keep in mind is it was the bottom of the first inning. He got Weatherholt swinging on a strikeout, and then Ivan Herrera hit a single on a line drive. We are now 3 batters into the game with Alec Burleson up. 3 batters into the game. He got Weatherholt swinging, Herrera singles. Alec Burleson hits a ground ball to Francisco Lindor. Lindor takes it himself, steps on second, and then walks towards the Mets dugout. And you go, wait, what? It was definitely a double play ball. He has the arm to get him out. And it was, what's going on here? And you're going to sit there and say, well, that's not a big deal because, the Mets got Mason Wynn out. But it cost Peralta 5 pitches. And to me, it was what's going on with Lindor today? Like, he never makes those mistakes. And again, I go back to the Richard Lovelady deal and what seems like what they're doing with these relievers where they're not using their A relievers in spots where they probably should. If your manager is portraying this feel here in early April of, hey, it's early April, these games don't really matter that much, etc., aren't your players going to feel that? And you have to wonder if Lindor's sitting there going, it's early April. He's not as focused as he should be. Because it was shocking from a guy like him. Shocking. And he got one struck out, but you go, okay, that's not a good start to the day. And then the offense went meekly in the second, meekly in the third, meekly in the fourth. I mean, the Mets, here's some stats for you, right? You want to hear some stats about how bad their offense was. The Mets sent 27 batters to the plate without a hit. From the 5th inning on Tuesday to the 4th inning on Wednesday, the Mets did not get a hit. And remember the guys we're facing here. Like, Matt Liberatore's a nice pitcher. He's not Randy Johnson. The back end of the Cardinals bullpen is not good. Ryan Stanek was in that. Like, J. Romero's a nice pitcher. But these guys aren't, you're not going to sit there and go, oh, that's everyday Eddie Guerrero going out there. Like, they're nice pitchers, but you should get a hit. 27 batters without a hit. the Cardinals essentially threw a no-hitter over 2 games. Just unacceptable. Unacceptable. And so this is what Freddie Peralta's dealing with. Now, I thought Peralta pitched really, really well today. And he got a lead in the 6th inning when Juan Soto hit that home run that was just fair. And it kind of gave us all, because Soto, to me, as bad as this offense has been, and we're going to give you some numbers of how bad it's been, Soto, to me, has been the guy who is exempt of all this. There might be 1 or 2 other guys, but Juan Soto's been good. He's had some rough at-bats with runners in scoring position, but he's walked a lot. He's taken his singles. He's been fine. He's been fine. My one knock before today would have been, well, he doesn't really have a whole lot of extra base hits. Homered today. They get a double yesterday. Like, Juan Soto's been fine. Everybody else is the problem. So Soto hits that home run. Then Bichette follows that with a single. And Polanco hits a fly ball to right field. And then a single, a walk. Burleson strikes out swinging. They pull Freddie Peralta. Now, after the single for Weatherholt and the walk to Von Herrera, I would have pulled Freddie Peralta. I was kind of surprised Justin Willard went out there to talk to him. And maybe that was the conversation of, hey, this is your last batter. I would have taken him out of the game right there. To me, he looked kind of, for lack of a better term, he looked spent. And he got Burleson swinging, which shows me how much I know. But he brought in Huascar Brazoban. And again, this is where I'm going to critique Mendoza. Because Brazoban's a good pitcher. But there was 2 on, 1 out. He got Wynn to pop up, and then Nolan Gorman tied the game with a single, made it 1-1. And then he got Sagassi to strike out swinging. Then he takes Huascar Brazoban out of the game. Kind of surprising. Like, Brazoban's a guy who gives you multiple innings, or should. And guess who he brings in? A rush to bring in Brooks Raley. And I get it, we're in a 1-1 game. But Brazoban's good enough. Let him, if he walks somebody, let him start the 7th inning. If he walks somebody, gives up a hit, get him out of there. But instead, he brings in Brooks Raley, who's now not going to be available tomorrow for an inning, which, again, I didn't think you really needed to use him Monday either. You could have used him on Tuesday. And Raley was great. Struck out 2. Weaver was good in the back end of the pen. This bullpen, and then Devin Williams got a little hairy there for a little while, walking the leadoff man, Mason Wynn, which was crazy, but got out of it in the 9th. This back end of the bullpen has been good. The bullpen's been very good, other than Richard Lovelady. It's been good. Myers pitched today. I thought he was good. Raley's been sensational. Weaver's been fine. Williams has been fine. Brazoban's been good. This bullpen, and that's the one positive you can take away, this bullpen's very good. And so do starters. The starters have been good as well. I don't think you can sit there and say the pitching's been a problem. I don't think the starters have been sensational. But Freddie Peralta gave me a 5 1/3 today. I thought it was a decent outing. So, yeah. And then, of course, the offense doesn't do a whole lot. But, again, there was an interesting move here that Mendoza makes. Top of the 7th inning. Stanek's in the game to replace Liberatore. Liberatore went 6 innings, 3 hits, the earned run, which was a Soto homer, a walk, and 2 strikeouts. Stanek comes in. Luis Robert rips a single. Brett Beatty flies out. Marcus Semien, I'm going to get to him in a little bit. Called out on strikes. Beatty hit for Vientos there. I didn't hate that because you got the righty and Stanek. Okay, Beatty's a good hitter. Okay. Like, Stanek has to face 3 batters. So, you can't pull him for a lefty against Beatty. And then Alvarez gets up there and reaches on a catcher's interference. So now you got 2 on and 2 out. Ryan Stanek, who we know well, to quote a great New York radio host, is on the mound, and he's on the ropes. And Carlos Mendoza sends up Carson Bench. Now, keep in mind, JoJo Romero is warming up in the bullpen. You know, if I send up Bench, I'm going to face JoJo Romero with Carson Bench instead of Ryan Stanek with Tyrone Taylor. What? Like, that was ridiculous. That was a terrible pinch hit. And sure enough, when Ollie Marmol outmanages you, that's a problem. That's a problem. And that's what he did. Brings up Bench against JoJo Romero, and maybe part of it's like, hey, I want to see what Bench does here. Coming off the bench in a big spot. It's early in the year. But I get that, but you're trying to win a series. You're trying to win a series. Him going against JoJo Romero, them bringing in JoJo Romero instead of Ryan Stanek, that was a big win for them. Big win. Especially against Carson Bench. Hated that move. And the broadcast killed him for it. I'll give him that. So Raley comes in the 7th there, strikes out Walker, Pages, and gets a Victor Scott to bounce to him on a bunt. End of the inning was great. 8th inning, Mets don't do a whole lot against Romero. Weaver comes in, pitches a strong 8th. Then we get to the 9th inning. Jorge Polanco doubles. He winced a little bit at second base, which was not great. And they brought in Jared Young to run for him. So I'm hoping this Achilles injury, whatever injury he's got, I'm hoping it's not going to linger. But here we are, 6 games in, and Polanco's got a little bit of an injury. And he's wincing at second base. Now, he had a good series here. But a little concerning. Luis Robert strikes out, Brett Beatty grounds out, and then Semien, who just killed us this series, struck out swinging, end of the inning. Bottom of the 9th, Devin Williams comes in, walked Mason Wynn, which was almost unbelievable, but got Nolan Gorman to fly out, Sagassi to fly out to Bench, and then Walker struck out swinging. Top of the 10th, Semien starts the inning at second. Alvarez hits a ground ball to the pitcher, Justin Brule. And I thought this was a mistake. Like, I understand Semien's got a lead there, but he broke on contact, and he was going to be out. He's out of third base. And to his credit, he got into a rundown to where he allowed Alvarez to move to second during the rundown. So it was 1 out and a run on second. So it really kind of erased. You know, if he stays at second there, it's going to be 1 out with a run on second. And he was able to do that because he got into a rundown with a run on second with Alvarez and 1 out. A little bit less speed with Semien, with Alvarez over Semien. But so he did a good job there. But I thought that was a mistake. Like, what are you doing? Another mistake this team made today. Bench popped up to the shortstop. Lindor walked. And then Soto, in a big spot with the runner on second, popped up. Myers comes in, which I thought was a good move. A lot of people were surprised. I thought it was a good move. He hadn't pitched a lot. Bring him in there in a tight spot and let him pitch 3 innings if you have to. And he did a good job in the 10th. In the bottom of the 11th inning, Soto was the runner at second. Bichette grounded out, moved Soto to third. Jared Young walked. Luis Robert walked. The Mets had the bases loaded. Beatty grounded out. And then Marcus Semien, who killed us in this series, flew out to right field. And then, of course, Weatherholt was the ghost runner in the 11th for St. Louis. Myers got intentionally walked. Olsen grounded a double play, which looked like things were good. And then Mason Wynn hit a weak pop-up to right. I thought Benj there could have caught that ball. I thought it was a bad job by him. He seemed his angles in right field. He looks much better, much more comfortable in center than right. And maybe in a little bit of time he'll be fine in right. But it was not the best play by Benj. It looked like what bothers me is it looked like he kind of Cadillac'd it for the first couple of steps and then said, "Oh, I got to get this ball." And again, the malaise behind this team. The maybe we're still in spring training kind of feeling with this team. Does that go to Benj, who, I don't know. That bothered me, that he didn't take the first two steps hard. But overall, right, the offense is a problem. Like, we could complain about certain moves many made, certain decisions, but this offense is a problem. Here's some stats for you. The Mets were 0 for 11 on Wednesday with runners in scoring position. And right now, through 6 games, they're batting .162. That's 11 for 65. Lindor this season is batting a .143 with a .712 OPS. Now, Lindor's gotten off to historically slow starts, but what's concerning to me is his mistakes today. The base running mistake, forgetting how many outs there were. And there was a few mistakes in this series, right? Roberts' misread, which I talked about earlier, him overthrowing the cutoff man. Alvarez on Tuesday came into a game late, had an easy pass ball go by him. He screwed up again on Wednesday where he blocked the ball and then got up and walked towards the ball, and the runner on first went to second base because he was being lazy, and Todd Zeile called him out on that. And then there was a ball in the 10th inning where Alvarez could have advanced on a dirt ball to get to third. And he sits there and stands at second base like he didn't know what he was doing. And then Benj is kind of Cadillac, and like, this team has this malaise over them. And I was hoping this year, with Soto's serious personality and how they wanted to build this team with guys like Semien and Bichette, that this malaise, that this attitude this team had was going to be different. And right now it's not. And I'm hoping that changes. Maybe they go to San Francisco, win 3 of 4, and we're all laughing, saying, "Remember we were really concerned about this team in St. Louis? Ha, ha, ha." But it just seems to be a little bit of a weird, lollygagging kind of attitude behind this team. And we could, as Met fans, I know I have, and I've talked to other Met fan friends, we've complained about that constantly with this team. So now you got Mendoza in his 3rd year here, and you go, maybe Mendoza's the problem. Because everybody else has changed. The coaches have changed. We changed the players. There's one guy who stayed from last year. That's Mendoza. And that's why I'm going to do a little thing here with his status in a little bit, because I think it's important. But let's talk about the feebleness of this offense. In the St. Louis series, Marcus Semien, who I think gets the, Evan Roberts has the net negative award on his podcast. I'm giving it to Marcus Semien. If I had the award, I would give him the net negative for this series. Now, there's a lot of candidates, but Marcus Semien's the guy. 0 for 9, 3 walks. He struck out 5 times. And he's been good defensively. I'll give him that. He looks like a natural at second base. Every play you make, you go, "Oh, it looks great." But he is struggling bad. And I think it's time. We've got veterans like Polanco and Robert. Brett Beatty got a day off. I think it's time to sit Semien. Let Beatty play at second base tomorrow or Friday. Like, tomorrow they're facing a lefty, so maybe that's not an ideal situation. But on Friday, if Semien looks as bad as he has at the plate, definitely start Brett Beatty at second base. Definitely. Bo Bichette, 2 for 13 in this series. I know he had a couple RBIs. I mentioned the one that in the first inning on the game Monday, which probably shouldn't have been an RBI, because if Weatherholt gets the ball out of his glove, he's thrown out at home. Lindor is. But that counts. But 2 for 13, that's not good enough. Carson Bench was 2 for 9. Brett Beatty, as much as I've been singing his praises, 1 for 10. Jared Young was 2 for 8, 250. That looks like, outstanding compared to everybody else on this team. Luis Robert, who was great against Pittsburgh, 1 for 8 with 2 walks in this series. Corey Polanco, 3 for 9, which is good. Overall in this series, 1 for 10 with 3 walks. As a team, the Mets hit 175, 18 hits and 105 at-bats. Terrible job. And I do think it's time for a lineup change. A crazy lineup change. But right now, the Mets, in their first 6 games, have had the same 1-2-3: Lindor, Soto, Bichette. And Bichette's been getting up a lot with runners in scoring position because Lindor, and as much as Lindor struggled, he's getting on base. He's at least walking. And Soto's been great. I would move Bichette down. I'd move up Luis Robert, or I'd move up Polanco, or I'd move up Brett Beatty. I'd move Bichette down to about 5 or 6 in the lineup, and I would move Semien down to 9. I mean, he just, for a guy who struggled on offense the last 2 years in Texas, and this general manager came out and said, hey, we think he's still got a very good offensive player. His first 6 games here could not have gone worse. Now, he walks a little bit, but he has been terrible. Terrible. So that's what I would do if I'm Mendoza here. I sit there and go, you know what, Bo, we're going to play you. Because I do think, by the way, he's looked pretty good at third base the last couple of days. But I do think third base is wearing on him a little bit. He's still learning a new position, new place. Let's get him out of a spot that he won't feel so much pressure and move him down the lineup a little bit. I don't think that's asking too much. Alvarez, I think, deserves to move up. Beatty and Robert move up. So that's what I would do with this lineup, and move Semien down too. And I mentioned a day off on Thursday for Semien. I think it might be Friday. I would do it because you are facing a lefty. But I'll tell you this on against Robbie Ray on Thursday, I would sit Bench. Like, he doesn't need to face a lefty. Put Beatty in right field and see what he can do against the lefty. Put Vientos at first and Polanco at DH. Semien at second base. Robert in the center. That's what I would do with this team. So I'm going to play that game right now. The Carlos Mendoza hot seat status game. I want to keep track every series of where we think Mendoza is on the hot seat status. And I'm trying not to be too irrational here because we're 6 games in, right? George Steinbrenner fired Yogi Berra in, I forget what year it was, maybe 84, 85. I think it was 85, actually. Fired Yogi Berra 16 games into a season. 16 games. Said, I'm done. See you later. And you look at that and you go, that's crazy. Crazy. And so I'm not going to sit there and tell you after 6 games, although I've had people tell me they think Mendoza should be fired after 6 games, that Mendoza should be fired after 6 games. My thing with Mendoza is I wouldn't have brought him back this year for what happened last year. To me, what happened last year from June on was a fireable offense. And he got lucky that, for whatever reason, this general manager thinks the world of him and kept him. All his coaches got fired, pretty much. All the players got replaced. But the manager kept his job. So he came in, I think, on hot seat. Now, I got categories, right? There's 6 of them. There's freezing, which he's in great shape. Cool, which he could be better, but he's not getting fired anytime soon. Warm, which means I'm not there to fire him yet, but I think we need to keep an eye on it. Uncomfortable, which is as close as you can get without firing a guy. hot, which means get him out of here. And then the boiling, which I hope we never get to, is what are we doing? Why is this guy still here? Fire him already, please. So, where does Mendoza rank on that tier? I think he's in warm, and he started the year in warm, which is, I'm not there yet, but I think we need to keep an eye on it. Now, I'm not saying end of April, 25 games in, we should pull the trigger, but I'm saying if this team, 50 games in, 55 games into the year, is 500, absolutely, we should fire the manager. And so I'm keeping an eye on it because right now he's done nothing to change his status, which to me, he started the season as warm. He's done nothing to change that status for me. He's made some really odd decisions. And I get 6 games in, but he's made some really odd decisions. And I don't like the attitude of this team. I thought today's game, and Gary Cohen mentioned a couple of times, it looks like this team needs caffeine, he said on the broadcast. Like, that's alarming. You're against a team that, by the way, St. Louis, a rebuilding St. Louis Cardinal team. A team that doesn't have a lot of talent, a lot of young kids who are pretty good, but not a lot of talent. And you need a lot of caffeine. It just seems like this team's like, we're still in spring training a little bit. Like, it's still early. It's still kind of spring training for us. Like, what? These games count. And you lost the playoffs last year. You missed the playoffs last year by 1 game. Every game matters. So I don't love the attitude of this team right now. But there are some positives. Right? The pitching I mentioned earlier has been great. I thought the starters have been pretty good. They pitched reasonably well. The bullpen outside of Lovelady and Luis Garcia, I think has been outstanding. Even Minaya in his inning in a third that he pitched the other day, I thought did very well in that inning in a third. I don't have a lot of confidence in him, but I thought he pitched well. But the bullpen outside of Lovelady's been good. And maybe that's what Mendoza's trying to do, is keep the guys fresh so they are good. But my one knock on the pitching is the starters need to go a little bit deeper, and hopefully in the second and third time around this rotation, they can go at least 6 innings. Or at least pitch in his 6th inning, because some of them haven't done that. But overall, it's the offensive problem. So, Mets have 4 games coming up. San Francisco Giants, Oracle Park in San Francisco. Thursday, David Peterson takes the mound for the Mets, our left-hander, against Robbie Ray, veteran left-hander. I always make a joke, and maybe I'm too harsh, but I always say there is nobody more overrated in baseball than Robbie Ray. You know, a good pitcher, but people talk about him like he is Randy Johnson. Again, a nice pitcher, but he is not Randy Johnson. I expect a little bit of similar lineup today. I would play Beatty, like I said earlier, but I would expect that. Friday, Nolan McLean pitches again. Tyler Mahal for San Francisco. That game's at 10:15. Thursday's game, if I didn't mention it, is at 9:45. 10:15. Saturday, 9:05. Clay Holmes versus Landon Raup. And then Easter Sunday, 4:05 start. Kodai Senga against Logan Webb, who, the veteran right-hander for the Giants, who's been, in his first 2 starts of the year, has been very bad. Got lit up by the Yankees, got lit up in his last start as well. So it's been a little bit of a rough go for Logan Webb. Watch him come to the Mets, pitch 8 innings, shutout ball against this team. But I'm going to tell my fellow Met fans this, because, yes, especially initially, like I said, I remember when Lindor got picked off at first, I made a irrational text message where I said I would take Francisco Lindor out of this game because I was so annoyed with him for getting the outs and getting picked off there. I'm trying to be rational here, and we're 6 games in. And a lot of people are going to say, well, it's 6 games. You still got 156 to play. No doubt about it. I think a lot of this fan base is a little on edge because of what happened with losing their popular players in Nimmo and Alonso and Edwin Diaz. I think a lot of this fan base is on edge because of what happened last year, myself included, where from about middle of June on, this team was one of the 4, 5 worst in baseball. And so now you're sitting there going, okay, we watched trash baseball for 3.5 months. Let's get April off to a good start. And you go into a series that should have been winnable. No question about it. It's winnable. Against the St. Louis Cardinals. And you lose 2-3. And you don't look good. The offense doesn't look good at all. And that's where the concerns are. And again, maybe we go to San Francisco and everything looks fine. But it's alarming, some of the stuff we've seen. And I'm going to be very tough on the little mental mistakes. We can't have what happened to Lindor with the outs. We can't give away outs. We can't get picked off at first base. And I know people are going to say, well, pick off first base wasn't a big deal. He looked lost there. And let me say this about Lindor. I don't want to cause any, put to any drama, but just an outside observation on Francisco Lindor. He looks a little bit uncomfortable, more uncomfortable this year than he has. Maybe it's the hamate bone injury to his hand. That's very possible. But he lost a lot of popular people in that dugout for him. And maybe it's taking him a little bit to kind of accept where we're at. I mean, he's not going anywhere. He's got 5 years left on his deal. But that was a major shift for a guy who I'm sure was friends with all those guys that got shifted out, and even the coaches who he's probably close with some of them. And so you got to wonder what his mindset is, because he does not look like the laughing, joking Francisco Lindor that we've seen in years past. And maybe it's he's not hitting the ball well yet. He's not feeling his best yet. That's possible. But it's something to keep an eye on, I think. Because if he doesn't start playing well, and again, I think done okay offensively, but if some of these issues that we saw on Wednesday's game, where he's, forgetting outs, getting picked off, if some of those issues continue for him, you got to wonder why. Why? So, I know we talked about a lot in this podcast, but I'm going to ask my fellow Met fans, take it easy. We're 3-3. It's not like, we're all 1-5 and we're panicking a little bit here. They're 3-3. Yes, it was a bad series in St. Louis. They should have won this series. No question. No question about that. But still early. There's still a long way to go. And I still think this team is very talented. Maybe shift the lineup around a little bit. Sure. But that's all you can do right now. And at least for the first month, that's all you can really do. Now, if this malaise continues, maybe you make some changes to the personnel here. Call up a couple of guys that might be hitting well in AAA. Maybe. But we're a long way away from having that discussion yet. So, let's relax. Let's get ready for a 4-game set. I know these games are late, so a lot of people can't watch them, but a 4-game set in San Francisco. And we'll be back here. Maybe after 2 games in San Francisco, we'll cut a podcast. And then the following 2 games on Sunday, after Sunday, we'll cut a podcast. We'll see how we feel. The weekend's a little tough and a little challenging. We'll see. But I hope to have at least a podcast after the San Francisco series. I want to thank everybody for listening to this edition of the Mets Mania podcast. We'll see you next time. Good night, everybody.